October 1918. The Argonne Forest, France. The trees are shattered, the ground is torn apart by shells. Fog hangs low, thick and cold. A patrol of 17 American soldiers moves through the mud. They're looking for German machine gun nests. Find them. Silence them. That's the mission. Leading them is a quiet man from Tennessee. His name is Alvin York. He's a corporal, a farm boy, a crack shot with a rifle. He didn't want to be here. He didn't believe in killing. He tried to stay out of this war. But now he's in the middle of it. Within hours, most of his patrol will be dead or wounded. The survivors will be pinned down, surrounded, cut off. And York will do something no one thought possible. He will take on an entire German position, alone, with just his rifle and his pistol. When the smoke clears, he'll walk out of that forest with 132 German prisoners. One man, 132 enemies. This is not a legend. This is not Hollywood. This is the true story of Alvin York, the man who didn't want to fight but became the greatest American soldier of World War I. Before the war, Alvin York was nobody special. He grew up in the mountains of Tennessee. Pall Mall, a tiny valley town, dirt roads, log cabins, no electricity, no running water. His family was poor. His father died when Alvin was young, so Alvin had to work. He hunted to put food on the table. He worked in logging camps. He helped raise his younger brothers and sisters. He was good with a rifle, real good. He could shoot a turkey in the head from 50 yards. He never wasted bullets. One shot, one kill. That's how you survived in the mountains. But Alvin wasn't a saint. As a young man, he drank too much. He got into fights. He gambled. He raised hell on Saturday nights. His mother prayed for him. She begged him to change. Then in 1914, something happened. One of Alvin's best friends was killed in a bar fight. It shook him hard. Alvin walked into a little church on a hill. He gave his life to God. He stopped drinking, stopped fighting. He became a deacon in the Church of Christ in Christian Union. And the church taught something very clear: thou shalt not kill. Alvin believed it deep in his bones. He believed killing was wrong, war was wrong. So when America entered World War I in 1917, Alvin York wanted nothing to do with it. He didn't want to fight, he didn't want to kill. But the government had other plans. June 5th, 1917. Registration Day. Every man between 21 and 30 had to sign up for the draft. No exceptions. Alvin York walked down to the courthouse in Jamestown, Tennessee. He filled out the form. Where it asked, "Do you claim exemption from draft?" he wrote, "Yes, don't want to fight." His reason, religious beliefs. His church didn't believe in war, didn't believe in killing, and neither did he. But here's the problem. The government didn't recognize his church as a legitimate peace church. The Quakers, yes. The Mennonites, yes. But the Church of Christ in Christian Union, no. His request was denied. Alvin tried again. He wrote letters. His pastor wrote letters. They explained his faith. They explained his conscience. It didn't matter. In November 1917, Alvin received his draft notice. He had to report to Camp Gordon, Georgia. His mother cried. She didn't want him to go. She didn't want him to kill. Alvin didn't want to go either. But he wasn't a deserter. He wasn't a coward. So he prayed. He asked God for guidance. And then he packed his things and boarded the train south. He still didn't believe in killing. He still didn't believe in war. But he was going anyway. Because deep down, Alvin York believed in duty. Camp Gordon, Georgia. Winter 1917. Alvin York arrived with thousands of other draftees. Farm boys, factory workers, men from all over the country. Most of them were excited, ready to fight, ready to prove themselves. But not York. He kept to himself. He drilled, he trained, he followed orders. But his heart wasn't in it. His company commander, Captain Danforth, noticed. He pulled York aside one day. "York, I hear you've got a problem with fighting." "Yes, sir," Alvin said. "I don't believe in killing. It's against my religion." Danforth didn't mock him. He didn't get angry. Instead, he talked to him. He asked questions. He listened. Then he said something that stuck with York. "What if you could save lives by taking a life? What if you could stop evil by using force?" York didn't have an answer. A few days later, his battalion commander, Major Buxton, called him in. Buxton was a religious man, too. He knew the Bible. He sat down with York. They talked for hours. Buxton showed him scripture. He talked about defending the innocent, about standing up to tyranny, about protecting the weak. He said, "Alvin, sometimes doing nothing is the greater sin." York listened. He wrestled with it. Buxton gave him a 10-day leave. He told him to go home, to think, to pray. So York went back to Tennessee, back to the mountains. He climbed up to a ridge overlooking his valley. He sat there all day, all night. He prayed, he read his Bible. He thought about his country, about his duty, about right and wrong. And somewhere in that long, quiet night, Alvin York made peace with it. He came down from that mountain a different man. He still didn't want to kill, but if he had to, if it meant protecting his brothers in arms, if it meant stopping evil, he would do it. And he would do it well. September 1918. The war had been raging for 4 years. Millions were dead. The trenches stretched across Europe like scars. Now the Americans were here, fresh, strong, ready to end it. General John Pershing planned the biggest American offensive of the war, the Meuse-Argonne offensive. The goal: smash through the German lines, cut their supply routes, force them to surrender. But the Germans weren't going to make it easy. They were dug in, deep, machine guns, barbed wire, artillery. They'd had 4 years to prepare these defenses. And right in the middle of it all was the Argonne Forest. A thick, dark forest, hills, ravines, fog that never seemed to lift. The Germans called it the meat grinder. Alvin York's unit, the 82nd Division, was sent in. They moved through shattered villages, past burned-out farms, past bodies that had been there for days. The smell was terrible: rotting flesh, gunpowder, mud. York didn't complain. He kept his rifle clean. He stayed focused. He'd been promoted to corporal. He was in charge of a small squad now. Good men, most of them younger than him. They trusted him. He was calm, steady, a good shot. On October 7th, they reached the front lines. The next day, they would go over the top. That night, York sat in a trench. He cleaned his rifle. He checked his ammunition. Around him, men whispered. Some prayed, some smoked, some just stared into the darkness. York thought about home, about his mother, about the mountains. He didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would change his life forever. October 8th, 1918. Early morning. The fog was thick. You could barely see 10 feet ahead. York's battalion pushed forward. They were trying to take a rail line, a key position, but the Germans were fighting hard. Machine guns tore through the fog. Men dropped. Screams echoed through the trees. York's company got pinned down. They couldn't move forward. They couldn't fall back. Then the order came. Sergeant Bernard Early was told to take a patrol. 16 men. Their job: circle around, find the German machine gun nests, take them out. York was picked for the patrol. So were some of his friends, good soldiers, brave men. 17 men total, including Early. They slipped into the forest, quiet, careful. The trees were broken, shell holes everywhere. The ground was soft, muddy, slippery. They moved in single file, no talking, just hand signals. Every few minutes they stopped, listened. Machine gun fire echoed in the distance. Artillery shells whistled overhead. York gripped his rifle. His senses were sharp. He watched the trees, watched the shadows. They pushed deeper into the forest. Then suddenly they saw it. A narrow valley, and at the bottom Germans, lots of them. It looked like a command post. Officers, soldiers, maybe 25 or 30 men. Sergeant Early made a quick decision. We take them now before they see us. The patrol moved down the slope, quiet, fast. The Germans didn't even notice until it was too late. Hands up, Early shouted. The Germans froze, shocked, surrounded. They raised their hands. For a moment it looked easy. But then the machine guns opened up. The machine guns were hidden on the ridge above them. German gunners dug in, camouflaged. And now they had a perfect angle. The bullets came like rain. Sergeant Early went down, hit in the arm, then the chest. Corporal Cutting hit. Private Dymowski dead. Private Waring dead. Men screamed, men dove for cover. In seconds, 9 of the 17 Americans were killed or wounded. The survivors hit the ground. They scrambled behind trees, behind rocks, anything. York dropped flat, his face in the mud, bullets snapping over his head. He looked around, chaos, blood, his friends dying. The German prisoners they'd just captured. They were lying down too, covering their heads, caught in the crossfire. But the machine guns kept firing, relentless. York realized something. If they stayed here, they were all dead. If they ran, the machine guns would cut them down. Someone had to do something. York looked up the hill. He could see the muzzle flashes. Maybe 30 or 40 yards away. 3 machine gun nests, maybe more. He was lying in a spot where the Germans couldn't see him. A little dip in the ground, some brush. He had his rifle, his Springfield 1903. He had his pistol, a .45 Colt. And he had his training. More than that, he had his instincts. The same instincts that helped him hunt turkeys back home. Stay low, stay still. Pick your target, don't waste bullets. York took a breath. Then he started shooting. York aimed carefully. He picked out a German gunner, squeezed the trigger. The man dropped. Another gunner moved to take his place. York fired again. Downed. He worked methodically, calmly, one shot at a time. The Germans couldn't figure out where the shooting was coming from. York was hidden in the brush, low to the ground, nearly invisible. Every time a German gunner raised his head, York shot him. He didn't rush, he didn't panic. Back home, he'd learned to shoot turkeys. You had to be patient, you had to be accurate. One mistake and the whole flock flies away. Here, one mistake, and he was dead. So he took his time. Breathe, aim, fire. Breathe, aim, fire. The German machine guns started to go quiet, one by one. But York wasn't done. More Germans appeared, riflemen. They started shooting in his direction. York shifted positions, stayed low, kept firing. His rifle was getting hot. His shoulder ached from the recoil. But he didn't stop. Around him, the other Americans were still pinned down. They couldn't move, couldn't help. It was all on York. Then something changed. A German officer shouted something. York couldn't understand the words. But he understood what happened next. 6 Germans fixed bayonets, and they charged straight at him. 6 Germans, bayonets fixed, running straight at York. No time to think. York dropped his rifle, drew his pistol. The .45 Colt. His hand was steady. The Germans were close, 20 yards, 15. York started shooting. But he didn't shoot the first man. He shot the last man in the line. Then the second to last. Then the third. Why? Because that's how you shoot a flock of turkeys. If you shoot the front bird first, the others see it fall. They scatter, they fly away. But if you shoot from the back, the ones in front don't know, they keep coming. Same principle here. York shot the rear man, he dropped. The others didn't notice, they kept charging. York fired again, another man down. And again, one by one from back to front. By the time the lead German realized what was happening, it was too late. York shot him last. All 6 men dead in seconds. The whole thing happened so fast, the other Germans didn't even understand it. They just saw their men go down, one after another. York holstered his pistol, picked up his rifle again. His hands were shaking now, just a little adrenaline. But his mind was clear. He kept shooting. More Germans fell. The ones still alive started shouting, panicking. And then a German officer stood up. He was yelling something, waving his arms. York pointed his rifle at him. The officer raised his hands. He shouted in broken English, "Stop, stop shooting, we surrender." The German officer's name was Lieutenant Paul Vollmer. He stood there, hands raised, shouting orders to his men in German. "Cease fire, lay down your weapons." One by one, the German soldiers stopped shooting. They came out of their positions, hands up, exhausted, terrified. York kept his rifle aimed. He didn't trust it yet. But they kept coming, more and more of them. 20, 30, 50. Some were bleeding, some were crying, some just looked relieved it was over. York's heart was pounding. He'd never seen anything like this. Lieutenant Vollmer walked toward him slowly, carefully. "How many men do you have?" he asked in rough English. York didn't answer. He just motioned with his rifle. "Line up, all of you." The Germans obeyed. By now, the surviving Americans from York's patrol had gotten up. Sergeant Early was wounded, but still conscious. He looked at York, looked at the Germans. He couldn't believe it. "York, what did you do?" York didn't answer. He was counting prisoners. 90, 100, 110. He stopped counting. There were too many. "We need to move," York said. "Back to our lines now." He ordered the Germans to carry the wounded Americans. The German prisoners obeyed. Then York lined them up, 2 columns. Lieutenant Vollmer walked at the front. York walked behind him, rifle ready. The other Americans covered the rear. And they started marching. Through the forest, through the mud, through no man's land. German machine guns were still firing in the distance. American artillery was booming. But York's group, they moved quietly, steadily. Every time they passed a German position, Vollmer shouted in German, "Surrender, the Americans have won, come out." And they did. More Germans joined the column. 120, 130. By the time they reached the American lines, York was marching 132 prisoners. 1 American corporal, 132 German soldiers. When York marched into the American lines, soldiers stopped and stared. They couldn't believe it. 1 man, leading a column of German prisoners that stretched back 100 yards. An officer walked up to York. "Corporal, how many prisoners do you have?" York was exhausted, covered in mud, his uniform soaked with sweat. "Honest, sir, I don't know, a bunch." They counted them. 132. The officer's jaw dropped. "How many men were in your patrol?" 17, sir. We lost 9. "So, you're telling me you captured all these Germans with 8 men?" York shook his head. "No, sir, most of it was just me." Word spread fast. Within hours, every soldier in the division knew the story. The corporal from Tennessee who took on a German battalion, alone. Brigadier General Julian Lindsay came to see York himself. "Son, how did you do it?" York thought for a moment. "Sir, I just kept shooting, and they kept falling." Lindsay smiled. "You've done something incredible, York. You saved your patrol, you knocked out those machine guns. You turned the whole battle." York didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, sad, he'd killed men, a lot of men. But he'd also saved lives, his friends, his brothers. Within weeks, York was famous. The newspapers got hold of the story. They called him a hero, a legend. The French gave him the Croix de Guerre. The Americans gave him the Medal of Honor. General Pershing himself shook his hand. "You're the greatest soldier in the American Army," Pershing said. York didn't know what to say. He didn't want fame. He didn't want parades. He just wanted to go home. When the war ended, Alvin York came home to Tennessee. He expected life to go back to normal. It didn't. He was a celebrity now. Everyone wanted to meet him, shake his hand, hear his story. Reporters followed him. Businessmen made offers. One company offered him $100,000 to appear in cigarette ads. York turned them down. "I don't smoke," he said, "and I won't encourage others to." A movie studio offered him money to tell his story on film. He turned that down too. "I didn't do it for money," he said. "I did it because I had to." All York wanted was a simple life. A farm, a wife, a quiet place in the mountains. And that's what he got. He married his sweetheart, Gracie. They built a home, raised a family. He used what little money he made to help his community. He started a school. He helped build roads. He worked to bring electricity to the mountains. He never bragged, never boasted. When people asked him about the war, he spoke quietly, respectfully. "I don't like to talk about the killing," he said. "I did what I had to do, but I'm not proud of taking lives." Over the years, historians studied his story. They interviewed witnesses. They checked the records. Everything checked out. York really did capture 132 Germans. He really did silence those machine guns. He really did save his patrol. It wasn't a legend. It wasn't Hollywood. It was real. And the man who did it never wanted glory. He just wanted to serve, to do his duty, and then go home. October 8, 1918. One man, one rifle, one impossible fight. Alvin York didn't go to war because he wanted to be a hero. He went because his country called, because his brothers needed him, because he believed. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it goes against everything you believe. York was a man of faith, a man who didn't want to kill. But when the moment came, when his friends were dying, when everything was on the line, he acted. He didn't hesitate, he didn't freeze. He did what needed to be done. And because of that, 8 men made it home. 132 enemies surrendered. A key position was taken. One man changed the course of a battle. What makes someone a hero? Is it courage, skill, luck? Maybe it's all three. But maybe it's something more. Maybe it's the willingness to do what's right, even when it costs you. To protect others, even when you're scared. To act even when you'd rather run. Alvin York didn't want to be a soldier. But when his country needed him, he became the best soldier America ever had. Not because he loved war, but because he loved his brothers. And that is what real courage looks like. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, if it made you think, subscribe. There are so many more stories like this. Stories of bravery, of sacrifice, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and we'll keep telling them. As long as you keep watching. See you in the next one.